They had gotten like some witchcraft done on them.
Okay.
Some guy was like doing like some sort of cleanse, right? And then he starts pulling a bunch of hair out of this person's mouth.
Oh yes, that's something I've heard about before. Yes, yeah, I've seen this shit before. And it's like,
Yeah.
bro, I can't even imagine that. Like, imagine that happening to me, bro.
Bro, that's so.
And it keeps going.
A lot of people could say, yo, it's easily fake. They could have faked that.
You could just swallow hair.
But she was throwing that up, bro.
I seen one video. I don't know if you've seen it too. It's like, it was also, I think, a woman being cleansed as well. And the hairs were kind of like the way it would look whenever you pull it out the drain from the tub.
Yeah.
It's like a string.
Yeah.
She was pulling out like that.
There was a young babysitter hired to watch a little girl while her parents went out for the evening. It was a quiet night, and after putting dinner away, the sitter let the girl stay up to watch a horror movie on TV. The little girl was excited, but halfway through the movie, she whispered that she needed to use the bathroom, only she was too scared to go alone. Not wanting to miss the best part of the movie, the babysitter came up with an idea. She handed the girl a small rubber ball and said, "Just keep bouncing this and sing so I know you're okay, alright?" The little girl nodded and skipped off down the hall, clutching the ball. Moments later, the sitter heard the soft sound of the ball bouncing in the bathroom and the girl's high-pitched voice singing cheerfully, "Bouncy, bouncy, bouncy." Relieved, the babysitter turned her attention back to the TV. Minutes turned into a half an hour. The babysitter began to wonder what was taking her so long. But the voice was still coming from the bathroom, only it sounded off, lower, not quite right. Bouncy, bouncy, bouncy. Feeling uneasy, the babysitter stood up and slowly made her way down the dim hallway. As she approached the door, the voice continued its eerie chant. She hesitated, then opened the door. What she saw made her scream. Sitting on the bathroom floor was not the little girl, but a strange man with wild, unblinking eyes. In his hands was the severed head of the child, bouncing it on the floor like a toy as he chanted in a deep voice, "Bouncy, bouncy, bouncy."
What does human taste like?
I would say it has a sweetness of horse. Horse is a very sweet meat, but also some of the qualities of pork meat, and I would say that depends on the person. A very extremely lean person will taste less good than a person with a little body fat.
If you guys want to see the full interview that I did with the vampire of Paris, Nico Clos, who, yes, is an actual cannibal. He served time in prison because he killed a man. It's an incredibly interesting interview, and it's frankly some really disturbing stuff. We go over some really graphic details about cannibalism, true crime, and so much more. The link to the video is going to be in my bio. We had to fly all the way to France to film this video, so if you guys could go watch it, share a link to the video, and help support me on other apps since TikTok is going to be going away soon, that would be incredibly appreciated, and the link is in my bio.
2 years ago, a young man visited his cousin's remote cabin in upstate New York. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, just miles of forest in every direction and an eerie, unnatural silence at night. Around 3 a.m., he suddenly woke up, not from a noise, but from the overwhelming sensation that something was watching him. He sat up in bed, and that's when he saw it. Crouched at the foot of his bed was a creature, pale, almost gray, with skin stretched tightly over a skeletal frame. Its limbs were too long, fingers nearly brushed the floor, its head tilted slightly, watching him with unblinking, pitch-black eyes. He froze, every muscle in his body locked with fear. The thing didn't move, not even to breathe. Then slowly, it smiled. A wide, unsettling grin that revealed jagged, splinter-like teeth. Still staring directly at him, it began crawling backwards towards the edge of the bed. It never turned its head, it never broke eye contact, and then it slipped underneath the bed. He didn't move an inch until daylight. When he finally told his cousin what had happened, his cousin didn't doubt him, not for a second. He told him quietly, "You're not the first to see it. They say the creature is called the Rake." There were no footprints, no signs of a break-in, nothing to prove it had ever been there. But ever since that night, the young man swears he still hears faint scratching beneath his bed, like it's waiting for him to fall asleep again.
The Pharaoh people of the Appalachian Mountains, this group of people who wanted to basically live off the land, and they ended up going into the Appalachian Mountains. And then they're also known for being cannibals. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because the missing boy, Dennis Martin, he was a 7-year-old, and he was in the Appalachian Mountain region and shit. It was him, his pops, his brother, and his grandpa, and they were off like on a family tradition kind of hike, going camping. And they ended up coming across this other family on the same trail. They had kids as well, right? So the kids came up with a plan saying, let's go further in the trail, let's hide, and then whenever our parents pass by, we jump scare them. So all the kids agreed, and Dennis, he was wearing a bright red shirt, so the other kids didn't want to be next to him because they were going to get caught easily. So they ended up like separating. He was by himself. The parents ended up coming where they were hiding. They got scared, but then Dennis wasn't coming out, so they started looking around for him. They couldn't find him. Everybody starts panicking, right? The family members start like going crazy searching for him. It ends up being one of the biggest searches. Over 1,400 people ended up volunteering to help. It was from park rangers to regular volunteers, firefighters, police officers, even the military came.
Oh, fuck.
But what they also realized is that since a lot of people were helping, it actually was messing up a lot because tracks could have been messed up, scents could have gotten confused because of how many people there was. So the dogs had no real leads to like follow. It wasn't until this guy, his name was Harold Key, came out of nowhere on a news article, and he had said that on the same day that the kid went missing, he had seen a man which his kids thought were a bear, and that he was carrying something.
It sounds like it could have.
A Utah mom and her 3 young children were recently found shot to death inside of a parked car in a small community, and it's just been labeled a murder-suicide. Here's everything we know. Last Tuesday at around 9:47 p.m., the Weber County Sheriff's Office were called to a home in West Haven after someone found 4 of their family members dead inside of a parked car. Upon arriving, police found the bodies of 32-year-old Mary Bellabara and her 3 young kids, a 4-year-old boy and a 2- and 1-year-old girl. They were all shot to death and laying in the back seat of the car. Authorities did find a gun inside the car, but initially weren't sure of the circumstances of the situation. But after reviewing the neighbor's security footage, they were able to confirm that Mary Bell shot her kids before ending her own life. Police believe that this occurred either late Sunday or sometime on Monday, but their bodies weren't found until Tuesday night. I live in this community right down the road from where this happened, and all I can say is that everyone is shocked and grieving. Mary Bell was described as someone who radiated grace and kindness and was just a really bright and beautiful person. Sadly, she struggled with depression, and she was reportedly overwhelmed by the hopelessness. But her family had no idea that she was struggling mentally until all of this happened. By all accounts, she seemed just like a happy and loving mom, and they had no idea what was to come. Mary Bell had recently lost her mom in April, so I'm sure she was struggling with that, and she had just moved back in with her dad. The Weber County Sheriff's Office states that the kid's father was interviewed, and at this point they are certain that no one else was involved. A memorial is started on the front porch of the home where the family was found, and what's absolutely heartbreaking is the fact that you can still see the kids' chalk drawings outside as you drive by. Please keep this family and the community in your thoughts, and if you're struggling, please reach out to someone and get help. Nobody wants you gone, and nobody wants something like this to happen again.
Why? Dad, she's just a kid. She's 12. Do you know what people would say if they saw me skating with a 12-year-old? They'd say I was robbing the cradle.
That girl is gorgeous. She's beautiful.
When I first saw this clip circulating on social media, I just couldn't believe it. Here you have a man who's now known to be one of the most prolific sexual predators in Hollywood, discussing what seems to be a how-to guide on how to groom a child on national television. I know that people are going to say, oh, it was a different time and blah, 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 this was more acceptable. But I don't think that this ever should have been acceptable. I mean, I can't remember a single television show that I watched that had any sort of content that reflected a value like the one that's being presented here in this clip. Especially coming from the mouth of a guy like Bill Cosby. It's kind of like Jeffrey Epstein giving you dating advice. But I'm just going to play the rest of the clip for you now. This is just really disturbing.
Why? Dad, she's just a kid. She's 12. Do you know what people would say if they saw me skating with a 12-year-old? They'd say I was robbing the cradle.
That girl is gorgeous. She's beautiful.
I'm sorry, all I see is 12.
There's a certain age that you said to me, Dad, I'm going to party, 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 and then when I'm burnt out, I'm going to look around for a woman to settle down with. Remember? What age is that?
24.
When you're 24, She will be around 20 or 21. And you're going to be looking around for somebody. Now, wouldn't it be nice to lay a little track and be nice to her so that she would remember you when you're 24?
All right, Dad. I mean, I'll do it. Only because it's your birthday.
Thank you.
And on my 24th birthday, if she turns out to be as beautiful as you say she will be, you have to find her and bring her to my party. All right.
There's been another mass shooting at a Florida university, and I don't know how many more of these need to happen before something is done. On Thursday the 17th of April, gunfire could be heard ringing out at a Florida State University campus. The campus in Tallahassee was actually victim to a mass shooting back in 2014 when a gunman opened fire at a university library. 3 students back then were wounded, but luckily no victims were killed before police shot and unalived the perpetrator. On Thursday, there were reports just after midday of an active shooter on campus near to the student union. And I cannot imagine how terrifying this is. I actually had a nightmare about this last night because I was reading about this case, and I just can't envisage actually being involved in something horrendous like this. The university shared to their social media for anyone at the premises to take cover and seek shelter. They advised all visitors to lock and stay away from all doors and windows and be prepared to take additional protective measures. Now, I'm not sure what they mean by protective measures, whether they mean sort of be prepared to defend yourself in some way, but when I worked in America, before we even started work, we had to do like an active shooter drill because I was working with children. We were advised to always wear shoes you can run in, and we were also advised to run in zigzags and to sort of actively throw things at somebody if they were shooting at us. Now, the idea behind that, I believe, is to try and buy some time and throw the perpetrator off so you can potentially escape. And I found doing that active shooter drill just so traumatic. I was crying after doing it. We had to sit and listen to loads of different weapons and how they sounded so we would know whether it was like hunting weapon or like, I'm not sure how much I can say on here, but yeah, basically what type of weapon it was. Tragically, it's been reported since that 2 victims are deceased following the shooting yesterday, and several others are in a critical condition in hospital. The suspect is in custody, and police found weapons in the student union building and in the suspect's car.
I guess if you violently abuse your wife in California and then she mysteriously goes missing, your charges will just be dropped and you'll be a free man because she isn't here to testify. This you, Tyler McCain? I've never seen so much evidence in a missing persons case with no arrests. It's honestly astounding. I just went down a rabbit hole on the disappearance of Nikki McCain, and more people should be aware of this. Nikki was last seen on May 17th, 2024 at Mercy Medical Center in Redding, California. The last time anyone heard from her was when she texted her sister a little after midnight on May 18th that she was driving her mother-in-law's truck, and after this, she vanished into thin air. But unlike other unsolved mysteries and missing person cases, what happened to Nikki and who was involved seems pretty clear to me. Nikki was married to Tyler McCain for 16 years before she disappeared, and they had 4 kids together. But over the last 5 years, their relationship turned violent, and Nikki became a victim of domestic violence. On multiple occasions, Nikki's family stated that she had black eyes and bruises all over her body, but they thought that she didn't want to talk about it because she wanted to be the stronger older sister and didn't want anyone to worry. But the relationship became so volatile that at a certain point, the couple's 4 kids were removed from the home and placed with a family member. The situation kind of came to a head in November of last year when Tyler beat Nikki up. According to police reports, Nikki returned to their Happy Valley home one night when Tyler immediately jumped on top of her and began hitting her. He then wrapped her wrists and ankles in duct tape as well as her mouth and then placed her face down on the floor where he threatened to kill her. Nikki somehow escaped the house, but before she could drive off, Tyler jumped onto the hood of her car to prevent her from leaving. This luckily didn't work, and she made it out where she was then taken to the hospital. Nikki told police that she fully knew he was going to kill her, and even the police officer noted how both of her eyes were black and swollen, and it looked like she had been hit in the face multiple times. Tyler was quickly arrested for this, but he denied having anything to do with her injuries. He said that Nikki had gotten into a fight with another woman. Authorities searched the couple's 3.5-acre property and found 5 guns, including an AK-47 style rifle that was reported missing from Oregon. Although he pleaded not guilty, Tyler was charged with felony domestic violence, false imprisonment, and assault in December. His court hearing was May 7th of this year, and this is when Nikki Nikki told her sister that she was filing for divorce and planning to leave Tyler for good. She was even meeting with a victim's advocate and had gone to One Safe Place, which provides support to domestic violence victims. But then 11 days later, Nikki vanished, and she hasn't been seen since. She spent her last day with Tyler's mom, Jeanette McCain, and she was driving her car. After sending that final text to her sister, her phone stopped receiving any of her family's texts, indicating that it was either shut off, dead, or broken. After a few days of no contact, which was odd for Nikki considering she was extremely close to her siblings, her family reported her missing to the Reading Police Department, but it was ultimately passed over to the Shasta County Sheriff's Major Crimes Unit. During the investigation, Tyler's story changed multiple times about what could have happened to his wife. He initially said that she took an Uber somewhere that night, then said that she started dating a woman, and then finally said that she went to Vegas with an unknown man. Meanwhile, there have been multiple searches for Nikki, but Tyler has reportedly never helped look for her. She completely vanished, but then a week after her disappearance, her 2002 Chevy Avalanche was found along Highway 36, near the small town of Begum. This is about 50 miles away from where she was last seen. There are reportedly only a few possible routes that you could take to get to this location, which is shown here in this picture. And for reference, Nikki and Tyler's home is right in the middle of this map, so there would be no reason for her to go all the way out here on her own. Now, this is going to make your blood boil. Even though there was documented proof that Tyler had abused Nikki, and even though multiple people witnessed him abuse her on several different occasions, all of the charges were dismissed against Tyler because Nikki went missing. And as the sole victim and witness in the case, she was unable to testify. So because she went missing and is no longer here, the judge dismissed the charges against her abuser, her own husband, Tyler McCain. I'm sorry, but this is just so unacceptable. I mean, even their own neighbors would constantly hear her screaming for help and would have to help her get away from him. On one occasion, they even saw him chasing her around the property with a large wrench, and they heard him scream that he was going to cut her head off. What's absolutely insane though is the fact that even though Tyler's charges were dismissed, there is still an active battery case against Nikki, and for some reason that hasn't been dropped even though she is literally missing. In January of 2022, a relative of Tyler's had temporary custody of their kids because of the abuse, and this family member said that she was attacked by Nikki. Nikki showed up and tried to take her children, and a fight broke out between the two. How crazy is that? The abuser's charges were dropped against his missing wife, yet she's still painted as the villain, even with all of this evidence proving otherwise. After Tyler's charges were dropped, dozens of people protested outside of the courtroom, including Nikki's family. Her sister recorded Tyler where he's seen flipping off the camera, and when she asked him where Nikki is, he smirked and shrugged. Now, adding to the pile of evidence is what happened a few weeks after Nikki disappeared. On July 3rd, Tyler started a fire on his property that ended up burning multiple cars and even a portion of his neighbor's yard. What he was trying to burn remains a mystery. But not so shockingly, Tyler wasn't arrested due to not having enough evidence to prove criminal negligence. Tyler has a lengthy criminal history ranging from burglary to vandalism to DUIs, and also for breaking his protective orders and owning firearms. He was recently arrested for driving on a suspended license, but like always, he posted bail that same day and was released. He was due in court on August 19th, but was a no-show. And instead of being held responsible, he just got another court date for October 7th. This has led a lot of people to question why he, for some reason, is getting so many chances when he clearly knows more about what happened to Nikki. Some people believe it's because Tyler and his mom are members of the Reading Rancheria tribe, and Tyler's dad has a very long, very important history with them. Some people think that the council may be protecting Tyler. Regardless, it's now been 4 months since Nikki was last seen. She and her family deserve justice, and the fact that her case is being so looked over is shameful.
This has to be one of my all-time most requested crime cases ever. This is the reality TV killer, Mick Philpott. It was the 11th of May 2012 at 18 Victory Road in Derbyshire. 6 children were sleeping soundly in their beds when all of a sudden a huge fire broke out. Now this fire was no ordinary fire, it almost felt like it just engulfed the whole house straight away. As smoke roared through the building, Mairead Philpott, the children's mother, rang emergency services. It seemed that the parents had been able to flee, but their dad Mick had apparently made heroic attempts to try and save the children. The dramatic scenes that unfolded almost felt like something out of an action film. It was like a theatrical spectacle that had been curated. And in a sick way, it had. But the consequences were deadly and very, very real. It wasn't long before the bodies of children inside the property were being carried out by emergency responders. Innocent little lives cut far too short. There was 5-year-old Jaden, 6-year-old Jesse, 8-year-old Jack, 9-year-old John, 10-year-old Jade, and 13-year-old Dwayne. 5 of them had died from smoke inhalation, and 1 was rushed to hospital and died at a later stage. And at first glances, you'd think Mick was a devastated dad. As the bodies were carried out by the responders, Mick actually had to be held back because he seemed so devastated. He was almost like lunging for his children's bodies. This appeared to just be a tragic accident, but the truth was soon revealed. Investigators quickly determined that this fire had been set intentionally, with petrol beneath the letterbox. And as the word started spreading about this horrific family tragedy, people started talking about Mick, the dad. It seemed his name was on everyone's lips. He was very notorious in the area. He was incredibly outspoken and provocative and had appeared on the infamous Jeremy Kyle show. He'd earned the nickname Shameless Mick and appeared on numerous TV shows over the years. He'd often brag about having 2 wives and was very obnoxious and aggressive on TV. It made people wonder, what's he like behind closed doors if this is what he's being like in public on national television? In fact, Mick had a very, very horrific and disturbing history. He'd been incredibly abusive towards women, including even attempted murder. He'd previously headbutted a female colleague, along with a sickening attack on a teenage girlfriend who had tried to break up with him. She was terrified of him as he'd previously not only broken her arm, but also dislocated her knee with a sledgehammer. And people always comment on my videos like, why do these women stay with these abusers? Well, because it usually gets much worse after they try and leave. And Mick did just that. When she said she was going to break up with him, he broke into her house, grabbed a knife, and stabbed her repeatedly in an attempt on her life. He then also turned the knife onto her mum. He was put in prison for this, but was then released, and his behaviour only escalated. And Mick was constantly having kids and not looking after them. He got married to his first wife but ran off with a 16-year-old girl. Bear in mind, this man was in his 40s at this point. He then ended up with Mairead, the mother of his deceased children. And after that horrific fire, they went on to do a press conference. Now, reporters were expecting, understandably, the Philpotts to sit there and ask for anybody with any information to come forward. You'd think that they would want to find whoever did this, whoever was responsible, and punish them. What the Philpotts actually did was just sit there thanking people. They didn't appeal at all for any information, and in fact, Mick only asked one thing: to be left alone. Mick was kind of seen throughout the press conference holding this piece of scrunched up tissue. He was dabbing his eyes with it, but there were clearly no tears coming out. It almost seemed like a prop just to show that he was upset, because half the time he had it on his forehead. And it wasn't just this that was making police incredibly suspicious. Neighbours from across the road reported to police that they'd seen Mick during the fire outside pretending to cough, not rescue his kids. Police now had enough suspicions to try and set a trap to catch the Philpotts out. They were keeping them in a hotel because obviously the house had burnt down, but this was a great opportunity to try and get some evidence. They decided to bug the room that they were in. Shockingly, they caught Mick interrogating his wife about how convincing she'd been when she was lying to police. It also transpired that a friend of the pair, Paul Mosley, was also involved in the planning of this fire. Shortly after the tragedy, locals had also spotted Mick and his wife in a pub singing karaoke, dancing and getting drunk, which was incredibly strange for 2 people who'd just lost multiple children. Nurses had also reported how inappropriate Mick was in the hospital, where his son was fighting for his life on a life support machine. Now, this was just before his son passed away. Mick had been making inappropriate comments to nurses and trying to flirt with them. The true story of what had led to the horrific deaths is purely down to Mick Philpott wanting to seek revenge on an ex and gain financially. It transpired that in early 2012 he was desperate to get a bigger council house after one of his wives had left him and taken her 5 children. He seemingly wanted to do something to get back at her and set the fire to try and frame her. He had envisioned getting her into trouble with the authorities so that he could have custody of her children and therefore have a bigger council house. He also thought that he would be this brave hero and the world would love him. He set this fire with complete disregard for the children's safety, and they went through unimaginable suffering at the end of their short lives. The local community really kindly raised over £15,000 for the children's funerals, but Mick was really not that interested in this. He was more interested in auctioning off the teddy bears that had all been left at the front of the house. He wanted to keep the money and told one organiser, "Shut up and just get on with it." Mick got given life in prison and Mairead and Paul got just 17, and I believe that they're now both free.
Whomever coined the phrase, "You can't make this stuff up," might have known the story of real-life boogeyman, Albert Fish. A slight, elderly man with grey hair, no one suspected the kindly single father of being sadistic child murderer and cannibal.
A missing woman has been found and is now charged with falsely reporting her own murder. 37-year-old Margaret Sweeney from North Carolina was recently reported missing. In a bizarre twist in this case, she's now facing charges related to faking her own murder. She's facing the charges of causing false report to a police station, false report of death or serious injury, and obstructing law enforcement officers. It's believed that initially police received a call which insinuated that Margaret was endangered or deceased. The day after, police were actually able to identify where she was by pinging her phone. She was discovered safe and unharmed. It's now alleged that the woman made anonymous third-party false reports to a friend and the Department of Social Services that she'd been murdered. Police at the moment are unsure why she may have done this, but they did say it does appear that there was some domestic issues with the boyfriend.
I killed my 5-year-old brother and ate his private parts. My name is Karina Ross, and I'm an 18-year-old Brazilian girl. It's all happening in 2019. My mother went shopping and left my little brother and me alone. When she came back, she found the front door locked. Completely worried, she shouted my name, but I refused to let her in. So she decided to call her brother to break down the door. When they both came in, they discovered a horrible scene, so gruesome that my mother fainted. 2 hours before, I went into my little brother's room to suggest we play a game. For no reason at all, I grabbed a pillow and strangled him. Then I took a knife and started torturing him. I removed his private parts and ate them. When my family discovered the scene, I tried to escape by fighting with my uncle, and they immediately called the police. I confessed to everything at the police station and was charged with first-degree murder. I'm now in a psychiatric hospital.
This is the scariest story about sneaking out. One summer night, a girl named Kim snuck out of her house to go to a party. When she got to the party, she started saying hi to all of her friends, got a couple drinks, and started having a great time. Later that night, when the party ended and everybody started to leave, Kim started walking home. And the whole time walking home, she had the strangest feeling that somebody was watching her. So Kim began walking a little bit faster. Then, out of nowhere, a man dressed in all black appeared on the road. Kim then let out a terrifying scream as the man sprinted towards her. The next morning, Kim's parents were woken up by somebody knocking on the door. When Kim's father looked through the peephole, he saw Kim's face. So he immediately opened the door. But what he saw when he opened that door haunts him to this day. It was Kim's severed head hanging from a nail above the door, with her head directly in front of the peephole. Kim's murderer was never found, and to this day the case remains open. And the scary part is, this man could be out there still doing the same exact thing he did to Kim.
I was burned in an oven because of my 3-year-old brother. My name is Jazira Thompson, and I was 1.5 years old when this tragedy occurred. On November 16th, 2015, my mother, Raquel Thompson, who was 25 years old, and my father, Cornell Malone, who was 21 years old, both left the house to buy a pizza, leaving me alone with my 2 brothers, one of whom was 3 years old, and the older one was 5 years old. A few minutes after they left us on our own while we were in the kitchen, my 3-year-old brother opened the oven and put me inside. I didn't understand what was happening, and he then turned on the oven to the maximum temperature. Unfortunately, I died from severe burns. My parents returned shortly after, discovering the horrifying scene. My brother explained everything to them, and investigators concluded that my parents had put us in danger by leaving us alone. As a result, both of them were arrested and charged with child endangerment. What do you think their punishment should be?
These are serial killers that got caught for being idiots. And yes, this is a series, so make sure you follow along. This is David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam. He's best known for being the serial unaliver who believed that his neighbor's dog was telling him to commit the crimes. And he was really hard to catch. His attacks felt random and lacked pattern, other than the fact that a lot of his victims were women with long brown hair. But the thing that did this man in was that he parked illegally while committing one of the crimes. Cecilia Davis was out walking her dog one night when she saw a car being ticketed. And then out of nowhere, she sees this figure come towards her with what looks like a gun in his hand. She freaks out and runs away, but hears 2 gunshots get fired behind her. The next day, she learns that 2 people, Stacy Moskowitz and Robert Violante, had been shot in that area. So she calls the police and tells them everything she saw that night. The man with the gun, hearing the gunshots, and seeing the car with the ticket. And the cops did a real quick search through their database and found that the car had been registered to Berkowitz, who was already on their radar. And the second they went to question him about it, he confessed to everything.
This is the scariest story about the mistake. A girl named Kelly was on a business trip for 3 days, and she was so excited to see her husband and kid. But when she got home, the only one that was waiting for her was her kid. Kelly then asked, "Where's daddy?" and her kid then said, "Upstairs with a girl." Kelly immediately got a pit in her stomach and walked up the stairs slowly, and then opened their bedroom door and saw her husband in there with another girl. Kelly started to scream and cry, and her husband tried to explain himself, but Kelly wasn't listening at all. And in a pit of rage, Kelly went down to the kitchen and grabbed a knife. She then went back into the room and stabbed her husband countless times. The other woman in the room was shocked and completely lost for words. Kelly then pointed the knife at her and said, "You're next." But then the woman said, "Wait, he wasn't cheating on you. He thought you weren't going to be home till tomorrow, and I'm a party planner. And he hired me to set up and throw a party for you." The woman then showed Kelly the idea her husband had. Kelly then dropped the knife and couldn't believe what she just did. Kelly then went downstairs, grabbed her kid, and left. And to this day, nobody has ever seen Kelly or her kid again.
These serial killers got caught because of stupid mistakes they made. And I cover all sorts of true crime and spooky stuff here, so make sure you follow along. Dennis Rader was a prolific serial killer in Kansas from 1974 to 1991. He was called BTK, which stood for Bind, Torture, Kill, because that's what he liked to do. But he also liked to taunt the police. He would send the police letters signed BTK, which could not be traced back to his real identity. So in the early 2000s, he had been dormant for over 10 years, but he still liked to taunt the police. And the early 2000s also brought new technology for communicating. So BTK, being the mad genius he was, wrote a letter to police asking if he sent them a floppy disk, would they be able to trace it back to him? And the police answered this letter basically saying, no, we totally can't do that. So BTK sends the police a floppy disk, and there is metadata on this floppy disk that says the last edit was done by someone named Dennis at Christ Lutheran Church. And then a 10-second Google search showed police that Dennis Rader was the president of the council at Christ Lutheran Church. Afterwards, the police basically came out and said that if Dennis had just kept his mouth shut and kept murdering, they probably would have never caught him. Let me know if you want more of these, because there's some other idiots out there.
I let a woman burn alive because she rejected my advances. I am Michael Lamar, an experienced firefighter in New York, and this is my story. 2 years after a painful breakup with my ex-girlfriend of over 5 years, I was going through a depressive period. During an outing with friends, I met Mariah White, a woman who changed the course of my life. I knew she was the woman of my dreams. Despite the predictable rejection of her advances, she crossed the line by humiliating me publicly in front of my friends, claiming to be far too beautiful for me. This humiliation destroyed the little confidence I had left, giving rise to a deep hatred towards this woman. A few days later, during a night shift, I was called to a fire, still haunted by the hatred and disappointment towards Mariah. As I arrived at the scene, I remembered it was the neighborhood where I had met her. We managed to save about 10 people from the flames. During the final check, I found Mariah unconscious due to the smoke. Surprised at first, relief overcame my emotions. I left her there, confirming to my team that no one was left. As I exited the building, people hailed me as a hero, oblivious to the dark story of that night. For a few years, I was able to live my life peacefully. However, thanks to a lengthy investigation, I was arrested and sentenced to 25 years in prison.
This sheepdog killed 8 coyotes while protecting its sheep. This video is of sheepdog Casper fighting off a pack of 11 coyotes who were trying to kill his sheep and eat them. Casper ended up killing 8 of them, but he was badly injured. The fight lasted more than a half an hour, and Casper's owner said that he disappeared for 2 days after the brutal fight. They were quoted saying, "We knew he was hurt because we found parts of his tail and blood and other things. So we were very worried." Casper eventually returned home with visible injuries. His owner said it looked like the coyotes just grabbed his skin and ripped it off. Casper was a watchdog for a flock of sheep in Georgia, United States. He was confronted by 11 coyotes and he had to choose whether to fight or fight because there was a flock of sheep and a pregnant dog under his watch. So Casper fought off 11 coyotes, of which he killed 8 in the initial attack, and then ran off into the forest and chased down the 3 other coyotes that escaped and killed them one by one. Casper then returned a week later with injuries to his neck, paws, and his tail was missing. He is now recovering. This might honestly be the Superman of dogs, and if you never heard the story about Casper the dog, well, now you have. The Hunger Games was actually based off a brutal Japanese novel called Battle Royale. Okay, so The Hunger Games is one of America's most successful franchises ever, for its unique plot of picking 2 kids from each district to fight to the death. But have you ever heard of the Japanese novel and movie called Battle Royale? If not, this is what The Hunger Games is based off of. The Japanese action thriller Battle Royale was released in 2000 and is based off the controversial novel from 1999. The movie follows a group of junior high school students who were forced to fight to the death by the Japanese government. The film drew a lot of controversy and was actually banned or excluded from distribution in several countries. In the movie, Japan just went through a recession, and the Japanese government passes an act to stop juvenile delinquency, sending a random middle school class to participate in a game called Battle Royale, where all the students in the class would have to fight to the death. This movie is extremely brutal, and it's definitely way more disturbing than The Hunger Games. People consider this to be better than The Hunger Games, and some people even consider it to be their favorite movie of all time. The movie, in my opinion, is extremely good, and this film created the Battle Royale genre, including Battle Royale games, anime, comic books, films, and many more. So if you're a fan of The Hunger Games, I really recommend to watch this movie because you're gonna love it.
The tragic death of Kobe Bryant shocked America and was a horrible way to start out the year 2020. So if you don't know who Kobe Bryant was, he was one of the most famous basketball players on the planet, playing for the Lakers for years. Before his death, Kobe Bryant was a household name. Everybody knew this guy. And he was one of the most beloved players and figures in all of the sporting world. Kobe Bryant meant a lot to a lot of people, and that's what made this helicopter crash so tragic. So on January 26, 2020, Kobe Bryant and 8 other people boarded this helicopter. That day, everybody aboard was headed to Kobe's Mamba Sports Academy, where Kobe was set to coach his daughter Gianna's team. So on board the plane were Kobe and his daughter Gianna, baseball coach John Altobelli, John's wife Carrie and his daughter Alyssa, Peyton Chester and her mother Sarah, basketball coach Christina Mauser, and the pilot Era Zobayan. Everybody that day was headed to the youth basketball game at the Mamba Academy, and all of their lives would end in a horrific way. That day, the weather conditions were not ideal. There were a lot of clouds, it was very dark and hard to see, and if you don't know the geography of the area where this crash occurred, it's very hilly, big mountains everywhere. These dense and foggy weather conditions caused low visibility. Weather conditions which eventually sent the pilot and the helicopter off track. It sent it spiraling down at a very high speed, and it crashed into the side of a hill. The area immediately caught fire, there was debris everywhere, and all 9 of the people on board perished. There's a lot that went wrong during this flight. There's a lot of detail that I could go into, but it would take a whole nother TikTok. 2 mountain bikers who were in the area witnessed the crash and immediately called 911, but it was too late and everybody had already perished. Eventually, the medical examiners determined that all 9 of the people on board had died from blunt force trauma. And this accident is going to go down in United States history as one of the most shocking helicopter crashes of all time.
This is the moment 44-year-old Jay Black went live on Facebook just moments before killing his ex-wife. He'd also just shot and killed his pregnant ex-girlfriend.
Anyway, I just did something crazy, man. I just shot my ex-girlfriend in the head, yo. Felt like a dream. Like, I never thought I would be that guy. I can't go to prison, so the person that really started my depression and all of this is my ex-wife. So she next, and then I'm going to do myself too. But I just wanted to say this to people. Don't play with people's emotions, man. Don't lie on these men. Oh, here's my ex-wife right here.
According to Jay, his ex-girlfriend Tara LeBang, also 44, had said that she would deny access to their baby. So he shot her in the head, killing her instantly. He then went over to his ex-wife's house. Jay's ex-wife, Wendy Black, had filed multiple protection orders against him, which were all denied. She even went as far as writing a note.
It said, "I am terrified because I do not know what he is capable of doing to me and the girls. I feel scared and I feel like my life is in danger." After killing Tara, he immediately went round to Wendy's and, with the children in an SUV that was parked in the driveway, he did a live stream on Facebook confessing to killing Tara and saying that his ex-wife was next and then he was going to kill himself. As you can see from the video, he then entered the property, and just after this he shot his ex-wife and then shot and killed himself. A sad, shocking end to their lives.
This true crime murder case is honestly like something out of a very far-fetched film. Rachel Del Tondo was suspended as a teacher in Pennsylvania. Rachel was seemingly happy with her millionaire fiancé. However, in 2016, she was actually discovered in a parked, steamed-up car with a 17-year-old student. This student was Sheldon Jeter. Now, Rachel managed to convince the police officer that the pair were just talking and not to file a report because she didn't want to make her fiancé angry. Now, later in 2017, things did come to the surface. The report ended up being filed just in case anyone got wind of it. However, this was then leaked to the media and obviously the school that Rachel was working at. Rachel was suspended pending an investigation and her fiancé broke up with her. Bizarrely, 2 months after the suspension, Rachel actually ended up in a relationship with Sheldon's older brother, Bolton. Now, fast forward to May the 13th, 2018, Rachel went for some ice cream. Little did she know she was being watched. She ended up being dropped off at her parents' house at around 10:30, but she was gunned down at the bottom of their driveway. She was shot between 10 and 12 times. Now, although nobody has been convicted for Rachel's murder yet, Sheldon is now classed as the prime suspect. In another strange twist of events, in 2021, Sheldon was actually convicted of murdering his friend Tyreek Pugh, again after going for ice cream. Rachel's murder has actually been very hard to solve due to the lack of witnesses. Frustratingly, the murder weapon was also never found. However, GPS and CCTV footage has built a strong circumstantial case against Sheldon. It showed an alleged pattern of stalking Rachel around the time of her murder. Morgan Martin was 4 months pregnant when she vanished. It was the 25th of July 2012 and she was 17. She told family and friends that the father of the baby was Jacoby Flowers, aged 24. Morgan was actually looking forward to being a mum despite her young age, and she was excited for the future. Knowing this, her parents were immediately concerned when she vanished. They just knew she wouldn't have left of her own accord. On the evening in question, she left her home in Tampa just after midnight. She was actually wearing pajamas at the time and had just stepped off her porch to apparently show the sonogram to the father of the baby. She seemed like she would just be a couple of minutes and then would return home. So when she failed to come back, her mum was really worried. Her purse and sonogram photo were both left behind. Police got involved and questioned Jacoby. He denied knowing anything and also denied having anything to do with Morgan. He said he wasn't the father to her unborn child, they were just acquaintances and they'd never even been intimate. Morgan's family and friends were obviously really suspicious of him, but police just didn't have any grounds to arrest him. Frustratingly, Morgan's case went cold and she was never heard from again. Throughout the years, police re-interviewed people and looked over old evidence. Now, Jacoby's story changed when police showed him text messages that proved he had in fact been intimate with Morgan. He then decided to say that he'd actually begged Morgan to get rid of the pregnancy, that he was concerned about being potentially in trouble with police because she was a minor. He also apparently already had 3 children and was concerned about how it would affect his current relationship to have a new baby. In 2016, he was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Finally, in 2022, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder because of a plea agreement. He was given just 25 years in prison in exchange for the location of Morgan's remains. If the remains weren't found, he was due to spend 40 years behind bars. He told police where Morgan's remains were, but they weren't found. Now, it's not clear whether he lied about this or whether the wildlife had kind of just taken the remains away over the years. He was given the full 40 years in prison because of this, and Morgan has still never been found.
What? Look in there, mate. Look in there. What? Look in there.
This is one of the most shocking love triangle murders I've ever heard. Erin Corwin was only 19 years old living in California. She was married to US Marine Jonathan, and the pair were childhood sweethearts. They'd met when they were in middle school and even got engaged when they were in high school. They got married in 2012, and a year later, Jonathan was stationed in California with the Marines. They moved to 29 Palms and seemed happy. Things actually worked out well at first, and they met another couple that was stationed on the military base. The pair in question were Nicole and Christopher Lee. They had a similar story. They were childhood sweethearts, but they did actually have a 6-year-old daughter. The couples grew close, and Erin would babysit for their daughter occasionally. Things seemed to be going well, but behind closed doors, Erin and Christopher had started an affair. Jonathan actually found out about this and was understandably very upset. Erin convinced him that she would end things and it was just a one-off and it would not happen again. Jonathan gave her the benefit of the doubt, but unfortunately Erin did continue the affair. By June 2014, things got very complicated indeed. Erin was pregnant. To make matters worse, she was convinced that the baby was Christopher's and not Jonathan's. Erin was strangely excited about this, and she seemed to want a future with Christopher despite the fact that they were both married to different people. On the 28th of June that year, Christopher invited Erin hiking at Joshua Tree State Park. He told her he had a surprise for her and she thought he might propose. She lied to Jonathan about where she was going and met up with Christopher to start the hike. Unfortunately, the surprise was not what Erin had hoped. Christopher would strangle Erin to death during the meet and threw her down a mine shaft. Jonathan was obviously worried when she didn't come home that night, and he reported this to police. Investigators got involved and quickly found out about the affair, so they questioned Christopher. He denied having anything to do with the disappearance. Tellingly, just days later, he left the Marines and then moved to Alaska with his wife and daughter. Meanwhile, police were examining tire tracks in the area where Erin's car had been found. The tracks matched Christopher's vehicle. A month or so later, Erin's body was also discovered. Christopher was arrested and pleaded not guilty. He admitted to the murder but claimed it was not premeditated. He claimed that Erin had confessed to him that she had SA'd his daughter. He said he flew into a rage and killed her. The jury did not believe this story and he was sentenced to life in prison.
This is the New York City Murder Mansion, one of the most haunted places on Staten Island. In reality, this place is called the Kreischer Mansion and was built in 1885 by a man named Balthazar Kreischer. Originally, there were 2 Kreischer mansions. One belonged to Balthazar's son Charles, and the other belonged to his other son, Edward. Only one mansion survives to this day, and it was the one owned by Edward. Only about a decade after the mansions were constructed, Edward took a pistol, walked outside, and took his own life. And after Edward's death, Charles went crazy. He hired psychics, he held these huge Ouija board sessions in the parlor room of the house, and he wanted to contact his brother to see if he actually died by his own hand. It's still a mystery whether Edward actually took his own life or if he was murdered. Now, if you ask me, doing all these Ouija board sessions and spirit contact sessions in the house, you're asking for the place to be haunted, and yes, it became haunted eventually. But that isn't the end of the bloodshed at the Kreischer Mansion. So in the year 1998, the Kreischer Mansion was bought with the intention for the property to be restored. But in the year 2008, a shocking revelation occurred. Apparently, the caretaker, Joseph Joe Black Young, was a hitman for the Bonanno crime family. And it was discovered that a few years earlier, rival mob associate Rob McKelvey, pictured here, had been murdered inside of the Kreischer Mansion. And his murder was brutal. He was murdered in the entryway to the house. He was dismembered inside of the building. It was a very, very bloody scene. And then his body was burned in the furnace in the basement. So this place is definitely cursed, it's definitely haunted, and for years people have been saying that this is the most haunted place in New York City. I mean, just take a look at some of these photos. I don't know what these green orbs are up here. I'm not really an orb guy, but they do capture some interesting stuff there. But then look at this. This is an apparition that was caught on camera in the Kreischer Mansion just a few years ago. And I mean, there have been so many full-bodied apparitions caught on camera there. I'm not really that big on spirit photos, but some of these just can't be denied. I'm not even showing the craziest ones. So if this story interests you and you want to see a full overnight ghost hunt that we did there, you can go check out the new video on the New York Post's YouTube channel or on the New York Post website. The series that I'm involved with and that I host on there is called Haunted, Abandoned, and Hella Creepy. And this is the first episode. It just premiered today. We stayed overnight at the Kreischer Mansion. We caught some incredible evidence, including, this is the craziest thing. This is something that you don't see all the time when you ghost hunt. We were down in the basement where the body was burned, and we asked for a sign, and one of the light bulbs hanging from a string, actually the light bulb that was right in front of us, it was on the whole time we were shooting. And as soon as we asked for a sign, the light bulb just started to flicker in front of us. The whole cast and the crew were like, what the hell? We all looked at it. and all of a sudden the light bulb flickers and it slowly fades out and burns out completely right in front of us. So yeah, check out Haunted, Abandoned, and Hella Creepy right now on YouTube. Just search for the New York Post. Super excited to be hosting the show. And yeah, let me know if you want to hear more ghost stories from New York.
Quick trigger warning for part 2. The details of Elisa's death are quite hard to listen to. Now that she had full custody of her daughter, the abuse of Elisa escalated really quickly. Awilda took her out of her private school and enrolled her in a public school. The school's principal quickly observed that Elisa, now aged 5, was emotionally disturbed, withdrawn, and was having regular toileting accidents at school. The principal and Elisa's teachers also noted multiple bruises, and Elisa had started tearing out chunks of her own hair. On March 20th, 1994, Elisa was admitted to hospital with a broken shoulder. This injury was actually found to be 3 days old. Elisa's teachers contacted social services to say that they thought she was being abused, but this was rejected due to lack of evidence. And in December that year, Awilda actually withdrew Elisa from school permanently. She'd also started using crack cocaine again. With Elisa now permanently at home with her mother, the abuse escalated even more. She was locked in her room for most of the day, was not allowed to socialise with her siblings, and was forced to use a chamber pot kept in her bedroom. She was actually forced to eat and drink the contents of her chamber pot. She was regularly kicked, punched, burnt, and Awilda would hold her upside down and mop the floor with her face and hair. She was hung from a curtain rod for Awilda's entertainment, and she had a heavy chest of drawers dropped on her toes and fingers. She was also sexually abused quite regularly. On November 15th, 1995, Elisa was beaten so badly by her mother that she lost consciousness. Awilda had slammed her head into a concrete wall so hard that she dropped to the floor, and it caused a brain hemorrhage. Elisa lay in the house, lifeless, for 2 whole days. Awilda actually contacted her sister at one point and said that she was laid on the floor with fluid leaking from her nose and mouth. This was found later to be brain fluid. Her sister urged her to call an ambulance, and she said she would the next morning. The next day, a neighbour came round, and Awilda made no attempts to hide Elisa's body. She was laid there on the floor, and the neighbour immediately called an ambulance. Elisa was pronounced dead, and an autopsy showed a catalogue of injuries. She had broken fingers, broken toes, damage to her internal organs, evidence of sexual abuse, and a massive brain injury. Elisa's funeral was held on November 29th, 1995, and there were around 300 people in attendance. Awilda Lopez pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was given a term of 15 years to life. She's been denied parole a number of times, the latest being in 2022.
This is Larry Nassar, the former doctor to the United States women's gymnastics team, and a serial child molester. Before his fall from grace, Larry was a very well-respected doctor, and he held a very high position in the sports world. From the year 1996 to the year 2014, Larry served as the National Medical Coordinator for the USA gymnastics team. Basically, he was ensuring that all the competitors on the team were fit, he would treat injuries, he would do checkups, all of that. Allegations that Larry had been attracted to and had been touching minors first surfaced in the early 90s. But it took until the year 2015 for all of this to come to light, so in all of those years, he was allowed to do all of these things to these young girls completely unchecked. So in 2015, a gymnast and her coach reported Larry to the USA Gymnastics officials, and in 2016, USA Gymnastics completely cut ties with Larry. But it turns out that for years, decades, Larry had been touching young minor girls while they were getting exams from him. One former gymnast named Rachel Denhollander stated that Larry had abused her 5 times during 5 doctor visits in the year 2000 when she was a minor. And after these accusations came out, the case was blown wide open, and so many gymnasts came forward and said that Larry had sexually abused them during their checkups, including Simone Biles, who at the time was one of the most famous gymnastic athletes on the planet. According to these girls, when they were minors, Larry would groom them. He would say nice things to them, offer them great benefits. He would send them flirty messages on social media outside of office hours when he knew they were underage. And yeah, like I said, during these examinations, he would frequently touch them, probe them, do all sorts of deplorable things to these girls. Well, this turned into a huge story because apparently even the FBI was involved in the cover-up of this abuse. And a couple of gymnasts, including Michaela Maroney, had to go testify before the US Senate to expose this cover-up. You see, Larry had been protected by the organization he was involved with, and for years he was able to carry on with this pattern of horrific abuse without any sort of checks or ramifications. But finally, that all came to an end. There's so much more to this story, so many more graphic details, including what he did to the girls at a camp in Huntsville, Texas. And as of January of 2018, over 135 women had come forward and stated that Larry Nassar abused them. This was a guy that they trusted, that was hired by the organization they were involved with to help protect them, to make them better, to heal them. And he ended up causing so much damage that's so irreparable, it's horrific. And even later in 2018, a judge stated that they had identified over 265 victims of his serial child molesting. And the judge stated that there were probably so many more that would never come forward, that they would never know about. Thankfully, though, some justice was eventually served here, and Larry was sentenced to 40 to 125 years in prison. And I think we all know how child molesters get treated in prison. I remember this being a huge scandal when this story broke, and the cover-up and everything. It's just such a sad story, but I have to commend the bravery of the athletes for finally coming forward and ending this abuse.